It's Chelsea.
It's Nina.
And you're in the Critics' Kingdom. So today we're going to talk about The Descendants. The 2015, really popular...
I would argue revitalization of,
DCOMs.
The DCOM situation. Because I remember hearing about it.
Mm-hmm.
And being like... Or, not in any sort of detail, because I was well into my 20s.
Yeah, no, I was graduating college.
Yeah, exactly. But
there was enough talk about it.
Where I, knew that, there was... People were talking about Disney Channel original movies again, and I was like, well, I thought that they had stopped that.
Yeah,
I thought that wasn't a thing that they did.
There was a very weird, low... I don't want to call it a low point, but there was this point where it just, kind of died off, and I feel like it was, shortly after, our cohort stopped watching.
Yeah.
Which must have been, I don't know... 09?
Yeah, maybe.
08, 09?
Around
2010.
Around end of the last decade.
Yeah, I feel like there was just this point where they
the top of the teens weren't great for...
Yeah.
DCOMs. But I also think that they stopped... They
stopped making them for at least 1 or 2 years. Or,
I don't know if they stopped...
one year.
They stopped releasing them with the frequency that they used to.
Right. Because it used to be, once a month when we were growing up.
Dude,
there was a new DCOM.
Heyday.
It was like, ooh, what's coming out this Friday?
Yeah, you knew.
Because it used to be Friday at 7, I think.
Yeah.
It was
and
point
it was
viewing.
And, I remember, rushing home from, dance class on Fridays. Telling my parents, telling my dad, we can't stop at Blockbuster tonight. Because I have to go watch the Disney Channel original movie. That was a real thing.
Yes, no, I completely agree. It was a big thing.
Yeah, so it was a big deal when it came out for sure.
Yeah,
and I think the reception that it received
was
because that's great grammar right there. In case you were wondering which of us is the nerd, it's me. But yeah, its reception was
very positive.
Very positive.
A lot of buzz around it. And
very wide.
Yeah.
It was, it reached...
It reached us. We're no longer in the kids... Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
In the kids' sphere.
There was no reason that should have happened.
Yeah.
Except for the fact that, it was... So I guess I can't fully say that it's, beloved, but I think that it is beloved.
Yeah. I feel like for the Gen Zers, definitely. This was a big... This is probably what they will look back on fondly when they're our age. They're
High School Musical.
Of yore.
Yeah.
Of yore,
yeah.
Yeah. So, and this was also our first time watching this one since, like I said, we weren't really watching these when it came out.
Yeah, this was a virgin viewing, if you will.
Yeah.
So there was nothing to really, there's no nostalgia. Or
yeah.
There's no I remembered this of it, but forgot about this.
Right, yeah, we don't have that with this
fresh.
One. But to go into a little bit, a recap of what it's about, we're basically starting with Beauty and the Beast have now taken over and, united all of the fairy tale magical kingdoms, and they call it Auradon.
The United States of Auradon.
Yes, but they're also a kingdom because obviously they have a king and queen, so they never talk about that.
They don't go into that.
They don't go into that.
Fair enough.
It's semantics,
Fair enough, It's a kid's film.
Right.
It's a kid's film.
But they have a son named Ben, and
Ben is... He's turning 16 and therefore about to be crowned the new king, which again, his father is still alive.
Very young.
Very young.
But he's about to
whatever, alright, move
Ben's
on.
about to become...
It's time for him to pass on his crown to his son. And so Ben sort of first, or the way that we're introduced to the whole idea is that Ben sort of, his first decree,
right,
is it's a program to rehabilitate, reform, the children of the villains of these kingdoms. So
some
the
of
well-known,
the notorious ones,
the notorious, villains of Disney old. or Disney, I guess Disney's heyday. And they've chosen to start with the 4, like, most notorious of them, which are Maleficent, the Evil Queen, Jafar, and Cruella.
Mm-hmm.
So the children of those 4 villains. And the reason that this has to be a thing that he decides to do, and it's not met very well at all. His parents are like, you don't got to do that. Like, you really don't. Is because, so in this uniting of the kingdoms, the way, part of the reason they were able to do that is because they rounded up all of the villains in all of the kingdoms. Yeah, they literally take them and put them on an island.
Yes.
And then put a barrier around the island so that no one can get to and from the island, or no one can get off the island. It's called the Isle of the Lost.
Yeah.
No one can get off the island, and there's a barrier around it so that within the island no magic is possible. So none of the villains can do magic.
Yeah, they basically can't. Yeah, they literally can't do anything except live, but also this island is literally a slum. Like,
so it's obviously decayed into a slum.
Yes.
In theory, because of the character of the villains on the island, but also because it has been left to rot.
Yeah,
like no one.
They don't do anything.
No one's looking out for them. I'm confused as to how they get food.
Yeah, they never talk about that either.
It's fine.
but yes.
But yeah, so he's like, okay. Ben decides that, maybe we should give their kids on the island a chance, because their kids aren't the ones who
did everything.
Who tried to destroy various kingdoms
or kill
rulers
people
and all sorts of evil things.
Right.
So they should try to give them a chance by letting them come to the prep school and learn to be good.
Audon Preparatory. That's what it's called. So they drive them on over. But before they do, the kids and their parents basically hatch a plan where the parents are like, okay, well, if y'all are going to do this, you need to be useful, which means steal the fairy godmother's wand so that we can free ourselves and we can proceed to take over again.
Yeah.
So the kids are like, I bet, and they go in that car and they go to
They go in a limousine and they cross a golden magical bridge.
Right.
That appears and disappears in front of them and disappears behind them as they ride. The driver is great.
Yes.
I just want to say he's a highlight of the film for sure for me.
He's great. And they arrive and they meet the fairy godmother because she's basically like the principal of sorts of the school, and she greets them.
She does not have her wand.
Right.
Her wand has been placed into a museum.
Mm-hmm.
And is only brought out on special occasions, but we learn that later.
Right. Like the coronation.
Right.
Which you can see where we're going.
Yeah,
here.
Exactly. So they get there. They get to this school. They have this plan, and it's the 4 of them. 2 boys, 2 girls.
Yes.
There's Mal, who is the child of Maleficent.
Yes.
Evie, who's the Evil Queen's daughter. There's Carlos, who's Cruella de Vil's son. And then there's Jay, who's Jafar's son. Really not creative with these names. Anyway.
Now that you're thinking about it. Yeah.
When you lay it all out like that. Ben is an interesting choice for Belle and the prince's son.
The princeling's name is Ben.
But whatever.
But yeah.
Interesting and yet so uninteresting of a name.
Yeah. So basically their whole first thing, as soon as they get out of that limousine, they're like, we have to find the wand.
And they try, and they also really don't want to go to good school.
Yeah. They actively want to stay back.
So they're like, oh, if we can figure out, they spend that first night trying to figure out where the wand is, and when they figure out where the wand is, they're like, oh, if we can just go and get this wand tonight,
we don't got to do
any of this shit. Yeah. And our parents will be so happy with us. Even though they're evil, so are they ever really happy? But their parents
the answer is no.
Yeah.
They never.
But their parents will be so happy with them because, they got it the first night situation. So they go and they try to do that. They fail.
Yes.
They fail. And I think it's the fault of, the boys.
Yeah.
In particular, Jay, who's, rowdy.
Yeah.
He's sort of an uncontrollable child, it seems.
Yeah.
That's what they paint him as. His long hair and his leather.
Lots of long hair, leather, and black.
So obviously a problem child.
Right. But yeah.
So they don't succeed that night. So then they have to go to good school. Or they have to.
They have to go to school.
They have to go to school
with all these goody goodies.
Yeah, but they also have to take good class. Like, it's literally a class that they take that's separate.
Right.
That's taught
with
by
the fairy godmother.
And that's actually a pretty fun scene when they're sitting there and
it is.
And they're giving all these multiple choice questions about what's the good thing to do, and
they do actively the worst
all
one.
actively horrible things.
Right.
It's entertaining.
But yes.
But yeah.
So then they kind of hatch a plan to be like, okay, well, what's another way for us to get this in a relatively quicker way?
It's also based on, like, as we said, the fact that she doesn't have it, and it's like the fairy godmother doesn't have the wand. It's under guard.
Right.
So when will it not be
right
so well guarded that they can maybe figure out an in to touch it? And they realize that the coronation. Through Evie's storyline, it's like Evie has her own. Each of them sort of have their own storyline in their school experience, and
it's
Evie's,
also 2 hours. I would like to just point that out.
A lot happens in this movie.
But it's like we're trying to sum it up.
We're trying to be quick, but like there's a lot that goes down. So through Evie's storyline, they end up figuring out. I'm pretty sure it's Evie's storyline. They end up figuring out that during the coronation, the fairy godmother uses the wand. Mm-hmm. So they're like, oh, that's the in.
So we got to get you into that coronation.
Because they're obviously not automatically invited.
Right. So then Mal had already had the conversations with the princeling, a.k.a. Ben. And she was like, all right, I'm going to make this boy fall in love with me. I'm going to give you a little love spell.
Because they realize that here they can do magic.
Right. Because they couldn't do magic at home.
Exactly. So Mal has her mother's spell book.
Right.
And she uses that to, like, find a love spell.
Right, to make
that
him
they literally say has,
like,
this love spell. What was it? It has the best, like, likes or something like that?
Yeah.
They say something that's, like, so Gen Z, like, so post-social media. It's like, y'all talking about spell book. Like, come on. But, alright, fine. You gotta appeal to the children. But, so they find, like, the best love spell. They cook up, like, these love cookies.
Right.
That they give
and
to
he
the
has,
prince.
like, one or something.
And immediately falls in love with
Mal. Yeah.
And dumps his girlfriend, who is
Princess Aurora's daughter.
Named Audrey.
Who was half part black?
I assume that the princess is black because her grandmother... Like, I assume that in theory they have now made Aurora black. Which I ain't mad at it.
Right, yeah. It's like
but it's like, they've now made Aurora black because Audrey is clearly of black descent. Not gonna say...
She's a woman of color.
She's a woman of color. Maybe not all color. Probably not all color. But,
yes.
There's some in there. It's a gray area. But, like, we meet her grandmother at a certain point, who's definitely Aurora's mom.
Yeah,
and Aurora's mom is
black.
a black woman.
Yeah.
So, it's obviously a black woman. Like,
yeah.
who also might, she might have her own thing going on, but...
Yeah.
Aesthetically. So,
but,
anyway, that's just besides the point. That's just a quick aside.
Yeah.
So he breaks up with her, and he starts going out with Mal. There's a fun little dance number.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is a musical.
Yeah.
There's a reason that
we
forgot.
We'll bring that back up
until just now.
It is a musical.
It's a musical. So there's a big game. They win the big game, and then Ben inspired by the love cookie he ate, breaks into a Grease-like 1950s profession of love to Mel.
Yeah. It was very intense.
Everybody's dancing in the bleachers.
Right.
He also dumps his old girlfriend.
Yes.
Anyway, so they start going out. And, in typical sort of Disney fashion, this is, where, sort of the big, like, Act 2 turn.
Right.
Where, Mal actually starts to kind of like him, and...
They have their moments.
They have their moments, and all of the other little villain babies, in their storylines, they start to shift towards whatever their thing is that, is going to help them be less evil now. Or see the error in the ways of being evil. So, Evie is starting to realize that she has a brain that she can use, and she's intelligent, and what's his name?
Jay?
Jay is
Jay's really good
Jafar's questionable child. Get to that too. Is starting to realize that like he can channel his, rambunctious energy in towards like organized team sports and team activities and like that type of, male bonding. Yay. Carlos finds a dog. Learns that dogs and humans can be friends.
Yep.
And Mel is like learning like, wow, like maybe I don't have to seek my mom's approval so much. Maybe I can, I kind of like this dude.
The prince.
But now that means she's also starting to have some inner turmoil.
Yeah.
About,
who's right or what she
should be doing. So, it sort of proceeds in that way. There's like this garden party that they go to. I forget exactly why it happened.
I think it was
it's like a
coronation.
It's like a pre-coronation.
It was a pre-coronation to the coronation.
I don't know.
But then they finally do end up at the coronation.
Yeah, and everybody turns on them because this is where we meet Aurora's mom, who's black.
Right.
Because Audrey's like, that's the daughter of the one who cursed your baby. She's like, you? Why are they here?
Yeah.
And then it's chaos and the whole town is like, yes, why are they here? We hate them.
Which is weird because he made a decree and I thought everybody...
And it's also a thing of, you're the good ones. You're not supposed to hate anybody. Allegedly. But anyway, so that like kind of throws a wrench in things.
But he still wants...
But he still wants to be with Mel.
Wants to take Mal to the...
Yeah, and Mal has like a change of heart. She doesn't want to fuck him up anymore, so she gives him a cookie that's anti-love.
Right.
And he eats it, and he's like, oh, you mean this anti-love cookie that you gave me? Because you gave me the first love cookie? Girl, I knew, because when we went on that date and I jumped in that river, it washed me of all enchantments. And I was like, oh, this bitch drugged me. But I still like her. So, I'm going to just pretend that I'm still literally under her spell. And see what she does. Look at that. You gave me the anti-love cookie and did the right thing. So I still fucks with you. Come to this coronation with me.
Right.
So then they go to the coronation, and Mel, after sort of receiving that, like, trust and care and love and all of that, she no longer wants to doesn't want to fuck it up, so she's like, you know what, like, she has her chance, and she doesn't really take it.
Right.
And then, plot twist, enter the fairy godmother's daughter.
She's frumpy.
Mad frumpy. Well, not mad, sorry. That's really aggressive. She's not.
You said she's mad.
But not in like a physical way. It's like a demeanor sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like she just doesn't carry herself very well, and she actually is very pretty.
Yeah,
very very pretty.
The actress is very pretty.
Like her eyes.
That was clearly how they told her to.
Yeah. The way I read it as mousy. And, like, that put us in a weird place because I'm like, is her father one of the mice? But what does that then mean about...
the mouse child?
About, I got questions and it led us down a dark path, so we don't want to think about it too hard. But anyway, she apparently was not having a great time in the land of the good. And then Mel got there, gave her a makeover, gave her some extensions.
Evie.
No, Mel gives her the makeover.
I thought Evie was giving them the makeover.
No, you would think. You would think.
Well, right, but it was Mal.
But it wasn't.
It was Mal.
It's
Mal was giving all the girls illegal magic.
Because she got the spell book, so she could do all the things. And, and so she got her makeover and she was cool. And Mal took it back when they were starting to be mean to her. But she was like, no, I want this forever. And so she's the one who steals her mother's wand.
Right, and
during the coronation. And then Maleficent and the others come. Not all of them, just Maleficent.
Yeah, the others don't come with her.
Yeah,
I don't think they can get out or something.
Yeah, some shit like that.
Yeah,
she comes and like, but then I don't know.
Or she was like, "Wait on me" or something like that.
Yeah, and so just she goes over, and then it's like this battle where she like has the fairy wand for a second, then she freezes everybody but her and Mal. And her and Mal sort of just, they duke it out.
Right, mother and daughter.
Mal essentially being like, I don't want to be like you.
Yep.
I'm loved here.
With the New York accent.
Just like that. And then, this is very, there's a lot of stuff going on. And then they fight over, like, Maleficent's staff, I think. I don't know, there were a lot of wands. I wasn't... Mal ends up with a staff and, like, reads a spell and, like, sort of uses... The spell, like, rebounds off her mother after her mother turned into the dragon. It's a horrible dragon. The animated dragon is much better.
Yeah.
CGI is not great. But after she turns into the dragon, Mel uses the spell against her, and her heart shrinks. Her body shrinks to the size of her heart, which is very tiny, so she becomes a gecko.
Yes.
Scurrying around. And the spell breaks, and Fairy Godmother's like, "Oh, Mel,
Thank
you chose well."
Yeah.
And Ben's like, "I knew you would, because I love you, even though you drugged me." Stockholm Syndrome. And then, and then they live happily ever after.
Yep.
And Mal is, I guess, the new queen.
Yeah.
Or something close to that, which is the whole thing. But that's the movie.
Yeah.
And then there's singing. There's a musical number at the end. It's fine.
They also,
It's fine.
So, I guess getting into this, I want to first preface by saying what we were saying earlier, which is very much that this was not of our demographic, and this has been the first one that wasn't...
That we have no experience of.
This is, like brand new to
Yeah.
us. So, we have a very different perspective on it than I think, like, somebody who is Gen Z and, like, grew up with it, or one of these younger kids now, because I know they're still making more of them.
Or they've stopped because of Cameron Boyce.
Oh, right. Did they?
I think that they're not going to do any more because of... Or it's something that's, like, in discussion. Like, it's something that, like, sometimes people are like, oh, they should make one anyway, and other people are like, no, because Cameron won't be in it.
Right.
Yeah, but they could find ways to do it without him.
It's one of those the titles that's, I guess, still in the zeitgeist, though.
Yeah,
so
because,
it's like younger kids.
Because, you know, another RIP. This is getting depressing, how many times we have to do this. For these
I know, it's so sad.
It's really
RIP Cameron Boyce.
Who, unfortunately, he played Cruella's son, Carlos, and he passed away. I think he had epilepsy.
Yeah, and he had a seizure, I believe.
Yeah, and so he passed away after the making of Descendants 3, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a thing for anyone who doesn't know.
Yeah. But yeah, so we're just saying that we have a very different perspective on it because we're coming at it obviously from like a slightly older perspective now watching it versus and we don't have any romanticization about it because of that. So just know that going into it. Yeah. Because I know some people might be like, wow, you guys are like eviscerating it.
Yeah, coming kind of hard for it. And and it's, we're aware of that. But there are also merits to it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend
not everything was bad about it or anything. But just wanted to preface everything by that. But I think to get into, like, what our thoughts were overall on it.
Yeah. So,
I mean...
I know, I guess my big first thing was, you know, why does it look the way it does?
Yeah, the production value was,
It's not even... I mean, here's what's wild about it. It's like, I actually can't pinpoint what it was. I think, Chelsea, you might have the best reasoning behind why it looks so cheap and why it feels so cheap. Because the truth is that this is a Disney Channel original movie. Like, all these movies were cheap.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They were not spending a lot to make
They've
these
never
movies.
spent a lot of money to make these movies. They've always been...
Unless they got to a second or a third and that first did very well.
Exactly.
Like, they were not spending a lot of money.
But like, I think the difference is that, like, I've never, like, pointedly looked at one and been like, wow, this is, like... Or, actually, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true. I would have... Like, we got more to do in the catalog.
Right.
I don't know if that's true. But I'm hard-pressed to...
Yeah, I can't think of one.
I'm hard-pressed to think of one where I was watching it as a kid and was like, damn, this is broke down.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was watching this, I was like, this is kind of broke down. Like, I don't... Like, I know... Like, it's Disney, so I know you have songwriters. I know you have costume designers.
Yep.
I know you have
you have
good
sets.
Writers and sets and I know you have all of these things at your disposal in your basement. So like why is it so viscerally why does it not look great? And Chelsea, you were saying, you know, about just the way things are shot now.
Yeah, no, I feel like the cameras now are so HD that then you run into this problem where if the set and the design of things and the costumes and, like, all of that don't look
real.
Like, real and don't look expensive, it just looks cheap. Like, it's like, I feel like that's like the one bad thing about HD is like everything has to come up to an HD level if you're going to use an HD camera. Because Nina and I were saying, if we feel like if this was shot in like 98 or like 2002 or 2003, it was shot on film, so it just would look flatter.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't notice all that kind of stuff, but with this one, you notice like every little detail because it is so in focus.
Yeah, and you're just like, wow, that's not... Like, I don't know what that material is, but it's not cotton.
It's not a good... It does
like,
not read well on film.
Ugh, like, that's not...
Or
that's not it.
It's not that it doesn't read well, it just looks cheap on film.
Yeah, it looks like a costume. It doesn't look like their clothes.
Something that they're living in. Yeah. No, I agree. And I feel like that was like one of our bigger things. And then we also just had like the issue of, I mean, just some of the way that they like did some of the casting was a little like, when it came to like Jafar's son and like,
I'm sure here's the thing, and we talked about this like in thinking about things like, you know, Brandy Cinderella, right? Where like Whoopi Goldberg and that man
Victor Garber.
Thank you so much.
You know, I watched Alias.
You know, they have an Asian son and now make no goddamn sense, and they never like say he's adopted or anything. Mm-hmm. So there's no reason why.
And then even her stepmother had a black daughter.
Yeah, it's just there's a lot of things.
It's just never.
But it's never explained, and as kids we did not give a shit.
Right.
No one cared.
But I feel like if you're going to do colorblind, do full colorblind.
Yeah.
Like, everybody needs to make that sense.
And that's the thing of, like, in this, you know, I'm sure kids watching this didn't know this and didn't care.
Right.
If they noticed, they didn't care, or they just didn't know this.
Right.
But we were deeply aware of the fact that Jay is in no way Arabic. Like,
he's not Middle Eastern.
There is not a single part of that boy that came from...
He's not Middle Eastern, not Indian, not Sri Lankan. Like,
there's no argument that can be made for him being a part of the, like, Aladdin story, unless Jafar, like, happened to...
marry, like, Mulan or something.
Or, like, you know, there's a thought... I really... have latched onto this theory that Jafar stole Mulan's child before he left.
Possibly.
And that's really Mulan's long lost son.
Because it's just
because it just makes more sense.
It just
like, I looked at him and I was like, he could easily be Shan's baby.
He could. No, he definitely could.
He could easily be his baby.
Yeah.
Easily.
Definitely could.
But that's just that's a personal quip.
It was just one of those things that just threw us off when we first saw it, because we were like, okay, we have the Jafar, who's played by an Iranian actor, and then you have Jay, who is
Asian,
clearly
Russian, and Blackfoot.
Various East Asians, and then some Native American is thrown in there too, and it's just like, I appreciate the representation, I really do. But
it was a little distracting.
It was like I
had questions.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't understand why you wouldn't get a Middle Eastern actor.
Yeah. I also have questions regarding... This might be just the question time. Like, this is where I point out questions I have in the plot, various other things. We already addressed the fact that a 16-year-old is about to become king. Well, no, we addressed the fact that, like, he's being crowned even though his father's alive.
Yes.
He is 16.
16, yes.
And he's about to become the king of the United States of Aradon. So I feel like I don't have to elaborate on that much, but,
yes.
You know, a 16-year-old, like, he can't even have a beer.
Whose name is also Ben. Can we get into that, too? Like, I was just like, Princeling Ben? Ben?
Yeah, that was not...
Which makes no sense either, because I'm like, Beauty and the Beast was supposed to be in France. Why aren't you going to at least give him, like, a French name? Like... I don't know, it just didn't... Like, Andre would have been cute. Alphonse. You know, might have had a little bit more of a kingly tone to them.
That's fair, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I guess they were going B because Belle and Beast.
But Ben?
I don't know, man. I got nothing. How would the French pronounce Benjamin pretty much the same way, no?
I don't know if they have
how the
Benjamin.
Spanish do, but... But that's not helpful at all. Anyway,
besides the point.
We had our qualms. We had
a few questions about that.
I do also have a question about the fact that, okay, so it seems like in the film, all of like Maleficent, the Evil Queen, Cruella, and Jafar all live in the same
loft
tenement.
Yeah,
Loft in a tenement, but run down, condemned. It's in a condemned building.
It is
for sure. But like it's weird because like so none of them have like spouses that are with them, and I mean I guess they're villains, so I guess they could have killed them or
left them,
or I don't know. But like it's also a thing of like
they never address that.
They never ever address it, and there's a part of me that was like, is there a possibility that like that their spouses are just not on that island because none of those children ever reference their other parent ever? And if that is the case, then why weren't the children left with
the other parent?
Why were they given to the villains to raise?
Right.
And it's like a thing of like, even if it was an act of kindness, like I think the better act of kindness would be giving them running water and like a working sewer system and like
they're like for real living in the slums.
Everything.
Yeah.
As opposed to giving them children to look after and care for. It's very. Do you ever watch 3%?
Yeah.
On Netflix, it's very 3%, where it's like where they're like, go back and have children. It'll make you happy, but it's really just so they can have people to take the test. It's like it felt very, very like that.
Yeah, no, there was like a few instances in this that we kind of caught where we're like, just a little bit like a side eye of sorts. I mean, even the fact that they put them on the Isle of the Lost, like Nia was saying, it was a very talented tenth of them.
Or like when they bring them back, it's
when they bring them.
It's like we've made you into this. We've taken away all the resources,
you in a certain situation,
and now we're gonna take the in theory the idea is alright. We're gonna take the worst of you and turn you better,
right?
Which is a little different from the Talented Tenth, but it's still this idea of taking a portion of you,
right?
Fixing those fuckers and like
moving forward
with them,
right?
And hopefully they can be a shining example where we can trust a little bit of the rest of you,
right?
But some of you are already too far gone and you will never escape.
What we would call a credit to the race.
It was very like there was again some undertones or just some parallels to real world events that were a little troubling,
a little
in certain ways. That was a big one.
That was a very big one
for sure.
I mean, I think you even brought up the fact that it was very much like the sins of the father, type of situation.
And it's like in theory you start off rectifying that, which is fair. Like, the idea is that Ben recognizes that and he wants to fix that.
Right.
But, it does beg this question of, like, we're setting up this situation of, like, these are the good and these are the bad. And this is something that the good did. Like, the good, and continue to do throughout the film. Ben is really one of the, like, pretty much the only one who, like, it's Ben and Doug. Doug is a champ, by the way. He is Dopey's son, and he is my favorite character in this fucking show. He's so good. We love Doug. Ironically, I think he doesn't really act anymore. So, of course, that's how it goes out. But yeah, like you're saying of this, it's the scenario where it's like those are the good guys, and those good guys, and I guess that's the whole point, is to show that like good and evil aren't. It's a spectrum situation, and no one's totally good and totally evil, and everything can be sort of corrupted, in a certain space. But yeah, it's like you did that in the first place, and you actively condemn those kids, and have no desire to like reach out to them and help them. But even if that is the setup of like showing that, on the other side, you don't. Nothing happens through the volition, like, of these kids on their own, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like, even, if they had stayed on that island, none of, it seems as if the idea is that none of them would have gotten to a point, Carlos would have never found a dog to interact with.
Right.
If they had stayed on the island.
Right.
It's just that weird, it's just, it is, like, does very much have that sort of tint of, like, that white saviorness.
Yeah.
Where it's like, all right, because we can take you and pluck you and put you in this space away from all of that, you can grow and become better. As if, like, on that island, like, there weren't children born who... Or, like, that all of the villains on that island are irredeemable.
Right.
And, like, you know what I mean? Like, they're all just... It's a pressure cooker of
Evil.
sin and chaos.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The way that all slums or slums tend to be looked on
Right.
in modern society is like, oh no, but they're they're rats eating each other, and
Right.
they don't look out for themselves. They're too busy worrying about unimportant things to like move up in the world on their own. It's like that sort of mentality when viewing them.
Right.
And there isn't anything in the film to necessarily suggest that without the aid and without like the kindness extended to them by, that one boy who sees the Emperor without clothes on. You know what I mean? Who is Ben in the shining light. Like, without that impetus in that person to do that for them, that they would have ever come out of it on their own, or they would have ever been able to grow as people on their own.
When all it really does is
perpetuate that shit.
Build resentment. Like, I just feel like we're just building more and more trauma here. Like, I'm like,
Isn't that the plot of the second one? Probably. That one of them is upset that she didn't get chosen to come do. Isn't that the whole thing?
I don't know.
I feel like it is, because I feel like I've seen part of it, or it was just on TV one time, and I was like walking by. I don't know, somebody was watching it, maybe like a sister, maybe my sister, like a cousin of mine, and I distinctly remember that it was is it McLean sisters, China, the little. Am I making that name
the
up?
McLean sisters.
Yeah, the McLean sisters.
Maybe
China, who's the little one, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's the youngest one. I think she's in it.
Oh, okay.
And I just remember because I think it was like I saw the end of it or something like that, and I remember like seeing her, and it was this whole thing. I feel like she's like Ursula's kid. Something like that. I don't know. But it's this whole thing about, like, I think she's, like, upset that she wasn't
chosen.
Like, she didn't get the chance to come or something like that. Which makes sense.
Well, yeah.
Because, like, I don't know. It was just very...
Yeah, no, it's a little icky feeling.
Yeah.
Just a little...
As an adult living in this world today.
Right. It's very much, it feels...
There are tropes that seem to be reiterated
in it
that are not necessarily encouraging. It's the way that I would put it.
Yeah.
But again, like, this is for smaller children.
And
it might be their first introduction to it.
Right.
And I know that, now I can look back on, like, Freedom Riders and be like, all right, there are problems here.
Right.
But when I was 13,
I was watching, I loved it.
Ate that shit up.
Right.
And it did help form, my perspective of, like, how the world should be and what it means to, like, look out for people and look after one another. And it was definitely helpful in, like, allowing me to develop those thoughts and those feelings and those, like, mores.
Right.
So, in that vein, like I said, like, they definitely do attempt to, like, show this idea of, like, that good and bad are a spectrum and they're not just words.
Right.
And that they're followed by actions and that no one, like, in theory, and for the most part, they definitely are pushing the idea that everybody is redeemable.
Right.
Maleficent doesn't die. Even the fairy godmother says at the end, like, oh, she can grow. There's the potential for, like, if her heart grows.
Yeah, to come back.
She can grow in size. Mm-hmm. And, like, your heart grew. So maybe your mom's can, too. Like, maybe if you love her, like, it can grow, too. Like, so there's definitely that sort of feeling in the air, for sure. It's just that... Again, like, from this vantage point, I can see when we go deeper into the layers, it gets a bit problematic for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think you also have the fact that, like, all of the individual stories, like we were saying in the recap, where they all had their own paths to follow in the movie. A lot, other than Mal has a pretty well-developed one, and I would say Evie does as well, to a degree, even though hers is also problematic.
They're well-developed, they're just problematic.
But the other two don't really have... Like, there's, like, the two guys are kind of, like, left in the dust. They're very much just, like... Yeah. Like, Jay's is all about him basically, realizing that he can be, like, a star in organized sports.
And even that comes from... That's given to him. You know what I mean? Like, somebody's like, alright, just go play ball.
Right,
please,
literally.
God.
Which just gave me very much, like... very much like
colored man
$40 million slaves. I just felt
the last dance is on Netflix, y'all.
I know.
Everybody go watch it.
It just felt
you'll understand what we're talking about.
It just felt very I just felt very much like, oh wow, you're telling. And Cameron Boyce is Cameron Boyce is also a person of color, but he's actually half black, whereas the one that plays
Jay.
Boo Boo Stewart, who plays Jay, is, like we were saying earlier, Asian and Blackfoot. But yeah,
Russian. Don't forget the Russian.
And
this is all coming from Wikipedia.
Yeah, and white. He's various forms of white.
Well, yes. Okay.
He's various forms of white
and other things.
Right? No, he's an amalgamation, but he's also a man of color. But it did very much read as like, we're gonna make the big person of color be a great person in organized sports because that's all we know how to do with him.
Yeah.
And it just felt a little bit
they do also put Cameron Boyce on the team, but he's less useful. But he still ends up being, they give him a good. He has his Pippin moment.
Yeah.
Not Pippin. Again, The Last Dance is on Netflix.
He does. He does have a Pippin moment.
But I do recommend. He has his Pippin moment.
Yeah.
Or I guess he might be more of a Rodman, now that I think about it. Ben is definitely supposed to be Pippin, but less. Anyway, the point being...
But most of Carlos's Cameron Boyce...
His whole storyline involves an animal, so I can't
learning to love dogs, which I was also just like, this is interesting.
It's also crazy because it's... they clearly set up that the boy has computer skills... and
they just never act on it.
And it never really
goes anywhere.
It kind of plays a role in the very beginning, that first night, getting the fairy wand, and he stops the alarm once it goes off and all of that, and he handles dude on the phone, which is all right, go ahead, Cameron, or sorry, Carlos, bad
Carlos.
self. And then it's just not a thing anymore.
He basically just learns oh wow, dogs are pets.
Yeah, he gets a pet. That was
his whole storyline. And then the two girls, Mal's the main character, obviously, and then Evie's second after her, I would say. And all theirs are basically completely revolving around men, or
it's not even that they revolve around men, but it happens through men, very much
men are their linchpin.
And, it's just, again, it's the thing of, when you think about it, and you think about, every girl does have that moment, does have that show or that TV show, where it happens, where you're oh yeah, this, smart. For many of us growing up, Hermione was kind of that, that. This is someone who's, really smart in a girl, and it's, cool to be really smart in this. So, that's sort of Evie's trajectory, is her sort of learning to embrace, her intelligence, or that's there, and that it's something that can be used and embraced to, get what she wants. Equally as, rather than
solely using beauty and
rather than her very
fashion.
vapid characterization at the top of the film.
Yeah, which I also kind of have an issue with because I think it's kind of trying. It seems like it's always trying to tell you that you cannot be.
It's better to
fashionable and like beauty without that automatically meaning that you're vapid and have.
And airheaded, and
it's that's not true. You can,
or that if you have to pick between, or not that you have to pick, but because I get my hope would be that in the second one it develops where it's she is both, and it's that's ideally, my hope for it. But this idea that you might not have to pick one or the other, but one is definitely better.
Right.
One is definitely the better
and the other
thing
one
to
is
be, and the other one
lower.
Yeah, doesn't hold as much weight.
Which very much seems I just feel it's I think there exists in society the idea that if anything that's displaying any sort of femininity is automatically lower
in Western society.
Well, yes,
in American society, I would. Because I don't know if that's necessarily true everywhere, but
no, because a lot of places hate women. So
yeah, no, that's why I didn't say. I'm saying I don't know if that's necessarily true everywhere, or the parts, the things about femininity or the feminine principles that are looked down upon can shift from place to place. There are places in which beauty and luxury and those things that we consider vapid, maybe where. Elsewhere, that's not the case at all, and both male and female are expected to participate in it in
the same type of way.
Yeah, and in a very elevated way.
Yeah.
But that's just not the case. That's just not the case here, and we don't see it like that in terms of a person's character. We don't think that someone who is interested in those things, generally speaking,
right.
The trope has been that is not a person of good character.
Right. It's always seen as like a negative thing. So, that's just how I felt about it. But,
And she learns her thing through, it's...
Through Dopey's son.
Yeah, it's like first she's rejected by Prince Charming, who's Snow White's kid. And then Dopey's son, like, helps her out in a way.
But... Yeah, so I feel like it's like that was just like the two, or the biggest things that we kind of noticed on the character tropes specifically.
And Mal's obviously, like, her coming to terms with, like, trying to be a better person revolves around, like, this relationship with this boy. Even if he is the prince. And, like, being rewarded in princessy ways.
Right.
Like, the fancy dress and the, like, it all
the
sort
whole
of comes
to-do.
Yeah.
The whole to-do.
And the makeovers that they give to these girls where, like, I'm sorry, I just have issues because it's not a makeover. It's literally, they just lengthen their hair and make it wavy.
Right.
And I don't.
That's
to girls who already look good. Like, it's not even like they look crazy. Like, they already look very good.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's a Disney movie, let's be real.
Right.
But, it's just like, this is not... I don't know if it's the best movie for feminism. But... Considering its premise again, like, how can it be the best movie for feminism?
Well, and also when it came out, like, it came out kind of before all of this more recent stuff has,
situation.
It came out in 2015, so it was like...
Yeah, but that's not...
But it wasn't
there was a lot of conversation.
But it wasn't the level that it's at now. Like, I would not have expected it to seep down into children's TV yet. in 2015.
Fair.
Because that's what it has to do. It has to seep into it.
It has to come... You're right.
And then I guess the last thing that we kind of had the issue with is... Well, we talked about kind of at the top in the recap, but the fact that this is a musical, but it feels like the musical part was very much an add-on. It was just an addendum. Like, it was like half the songs don't move the plot forward.
Nope.
Which is normally the point of a musical, is that the songs also move the plot
There's
forward.
also, in the middle of it, there's a song, like, it's her, like, ballad, right? Like, Mal's ballad. Her,
right.
Her sad, like, swan song, sweet moment.
Mm-hmm.
And when she's singing it, they do this thing. And this is also why I feel, because I'm like, there are two possibilities. I don't know if they thought this was a good idea, which I can't believe is the case, because it don't make no sense. But I actually think what happened was, because they decided to add all the music after, they didn't have enough footage to be, like, this wasn't a fully, like, sort of choreographed thing. They didn't have enough footage to be able to just, like, run the song and have her, like, singing it without it, because it's all after shoots, probably, without it, like, looking weird or her just doing the same thing over and over again. So what they did is they do a rollback of everything that has happened in the film up until that point in various clips, and it's like, I was like, I don't... Like, no child has an attention span that short where they need a recap of everything that they literally just watched.
Yeah.
Where they couldn't get to this moment without having seen all of that less than an hour ago. It just doesn't.
It doesn't, it doesn't add up.
I was very upset about it.
They also do a weird, version of Be Our Guest, which, was horrible. I'm sorry.
It was horrible.
But it was just, the music is, other than, the only song that we liked was the first one that they do called Rotten to the Core. That was a good one. We enjoyed the choreography.
I mostly like the beat and the choreography.
Yeah, the beat and the choreography, but like, of all the songs.
Yeah, it was definitely the one with the most merit.
Yeah.
And we were excited about it being a musical when that song
because I thought they were all going to go that route.
And then
that didn't happen.
The whole, the Prince singing that song was not it.
Yeah.
It's not it.
So overall, would you let your kids watch this one?
Alright, here's where it gets... It's a yes. I'd say definitely a yes. But here's where it gets a little bit interesting, because I think that for all of what we just said, I've also been watching on Disney Plus, like, this Imagineering docuseries they have, pretty short. But it's sort of about the parks, like the Disney parks, from their inception to like where they are now, and like the team behind the parks, which is called the Imagineers, and they do. But like halfway through it, essentially you get to now, and it's them talking a lot about how like they like the trouble that comes with updating the parks. because you run into this issue of people, like, having become attached to what's already there, or, like, and having this feeling of, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Or this idea of, like, you know, now everything has, like, it's not even that you're changing everything, but you're adding things where you don't need to add things, or, like, you know, just the typical, what you would expect from updating anything. And it's this really interesting thing, like, just the way that they talk about it, in thinking about this movie, it sort of put me in a different place, because essentially they talk a lot about just how, at the end of the day, you know, this is the parks are supposed to be a living, breathing experience. And Disney is supposed to be a living, breathing sort of product, right? Or, like, place that houses products that continue into various generations. Like, at this point, it is multi-generational. You know, our grandparents knew Disney, our parents knew Disney, and we knew Disney, and our kids are going to know Disney, but we've all had it in slightly different iterations and slightly different versions. But regardless of that, like, I still loved, you know, Snow White and Sleeping Beauty. Mm-hmm. But I also enjoyed Marvel, and I also enjoyed Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off. You know, like, in all of these different ways, in a way that, like, maybe my parents don't necessarily access in the same way. You know, my dad doesn't watch Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off with me. And I think in that vein, like, there is a certain basic level of respect that I do have for this DCOM, and, like, for the fact that they even did this at all. Mm-hmm. Because I do think, and even those issues that I have with, like, the issues with, you know, feminist thought and, you know, racial considerations and histories and all of those things, like, at the end of the day, you know, I had to have had a moment when I was younger. In order to even be able to talk about these tropes, I had to experience these tropes. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and when I was little, like, it was I grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s. Politically correct, like, was not a fucking thing. Nope. And they did a lot of shit that was not okay everywhere. And through that, I was able to, like, learn and navigate, you know, and take all the good lessons from it, leave all of the, you know, questionable shit to rest, or be able to prod it later. And I think in that vein, like, I think that this does do a really good job of sort of updating it for kids. And it's a way of reintroducing them to, or reintroducing a population that hasn't interacted with these things before, like, into this space, into this world of fairy tale, that they might not access in the same, because they're growing up in a different time. The fairy tale maybe just isn't as cool as it once was. And how could it be when they're fucking superheroes? You know what I mean? Like, what is a magic wand to Hogwarts? Like, what is, like, how are you going to access these kids? And so the idea of making it, like, their descendants and sort of putting this spin on it, like, it was received so well, like, clearly. Like, kids clearly connected to it. Mm-hmm. And I think it was very smart. And so, those feelings that I have aside, like, I would much rather be able to, you know, have my kid be like, oh, wait, like, okay, who's Aurora? And be interested in, like, okay, we can watch Sleeping Beauty. And now we can have a conversation where my kid's like, all right, but they didn't invite Maleficent to the thing. That was kind of mean, too. You know, like, I feel like you can actually, this can actually open up so much and so much room to explore things. And explore things that are maybe not as okay anymore to, like, of your own accord, like, introduce to your kids, you know? Like, you can't find Song of the South anywhere. I grew up loving the shit out of that film, you know? Will I necessarily show Song of the South to my kid? I don't know. I really don't know. But I would also feel weird if my kid never knew what Zippity Doo-Dah. Like, if I was singing that, my kid was like, what is that? Mm-hmm. And I think that this is, like, the type of film where, like, they did that and they did it well, this weird in-between. You know? So, like, my kid might be like, oh, Maleficent's not... You know, they might have whatever to say about it, but, like, it's still a starting point, and it's a place for us to interact with it, and it's a place for kids to, like, maybe access a bit of that wonder that I had when I was little, falling into the fairy tale. And I can't knock it for that. So, like, is it like, I don't want to rewatch it. I don't need to do that. I've seen it. Cool. Done. But I don't, like, it's not made for me, and it's just that simple. It's not made for me.
Yeah.
But, like, for my kids who it would be made for, yeah, go ahead, watch it. And then talk to me about it when you're done. That's how I feel.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think that's like the resounding thing is as you get older, you start aging out of things and you don't understand why they did X, Y, and Z anymore because it's just not for your demo, which is perfectly fine. It's like this clearly hit a note with all those kids and will probably hit a note with more kids in the future. So I think I'd definitely let my kids watch it, and hopefully they would like it, and maybe they'd even be happy to see, like, a somewhat diverse cast, I would say, of people that are doing something different. And it's a great premise. Like, I mean, we said that even, I don't know if we mentioned it when we were breaking it down a little bit earlier, but, like, at the end of the day, that is a wonderful premise. Do I wish they had done more with it? Yes. But I think it is a great premise at the end of the day, and I think one that kids will enjoy because it's just fun. It's just fun. There's lots of music, bright colors. Why not?
I love the idea of knowing, like, all right, like, cool. Belle and,
the Beast.
They had a kid, Aurora and Philip had a kid named Audrey, and it's like in my head, I'm like, they could have named it better, but still, it's still cool to know and cool to engage with,
right? It's a natural progression.
It's a natural. That is exactly it. It's a natural progression, and you can't knock it. You can have your qualms, but at the end of the day, it's going to be here longer than you,
right?
And it's for the people who are going to be here when you're not, right? So, it's really not about us.
Right.
It's a decom that's not about us. And
that's perfectly fine.
That's perfectly fine. Go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead. But please, 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 that costume.
Yeah.
Let's get back some of those, that's my only thing. Cameras, it's my only thing. It's my only thing.
Maybe it'll improve.
It's not my only. It's clearly not my only.
Well, maybe it'll improve for Descendants 2 and 3. Obviously, you guys will know because when we review them, we'll be like, or we'll be like,
hey, guess what? It's gotten better. Fingers crossed.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's the Descendants.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Critics Kingdom. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify and SoundCloud so you can stay up to date, as well as interacting and letting us know what you guys think on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Critics Kingdom and on Instagram at The Critics Kingdom. We're excited to talk to you again next week.